So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Navigating Immigration Appeals, Practical Tips for Clients and Lawyers. My name is Wyatt Fraser. I'm Legal Aid Alberta's Engagement Advisor, and we'll just be helping make sure everything runs smoothly today. Before we get started, I did want to speak to a few bits of housekeeping. So by default, your microphones and cameras are disabled, but you are able to engage with us and ask questions using the Q&A feature in Teams. If you look at the top of your Teams window or at the bottom if you're on mobile, you'll notice there's a Q&A button. That's where you'll be able to submit any questions that you may have throughout the presentation today. We will have time at the end for questions, so please feel free to drop them into the Q&A button. If you experience any audio or visual issues, the old adage of turn it off and on again usually works. So what we would recommend is try disconnecting and then rejoining, and that will typically resolve 99% of the issues. Please note that we will be removing any AI note takers from the meeting. Just sometimes they post summaries in chat, which aren't always accurate, which sometimes ends up a little more distracting than it's worth. However, we are recording today's training, and it will be available on our website later next week. A copy of the presentation will also be shared via email to all attendees when we send the link to the recording, which again, we'll aim to get out potentially by end of day. If not, it'll be early on Tuesday. As we near the end of today's presentation, we'll also share a link for you to complete a quick survey just to share some anonymous feedback. Your input helps us plan for future webinars and gives us ideas for future topics as well. We want to start by saying we respectfully acknowledge that we are situated on the ancestral and traditional territory and travel routes of many peoples, including those on the lands of Treaties 4, 6, 7, 8, and 10, the Blackfoot Confederacy, Kainai, Piikani, Siksika, Dene, Saulteaux, Nakota Sioux, Stoney Nakoda, Tsuut'ina Nation, Métis people of Alberta, and the traditional travel route of the Cree. In an act of reconciliation and gratitude, we acknowledge all Indigenous, First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples who have lived in and cared for these lands for generations. We express our continued thanks to be able to work on these lands and represent Albertans in this territory. And with that, I'll turn it over to Legal Aid Alberta's lead immigration lawyer, Ruth Williams, who will be handling everything else for the day.
Thanks, Wyatt. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Ruth Williams. If we've not met before, I'm the immigration team lead. I've been practicing immigration law for over 15 years. My parents were immigrants to this country, so that's kind of was my entry and why I'm interested in this area and why I'm so passionate about it. Thank you so much for giving up your Friday lunch. Well, I hope you're not giving up your Friday lunch. I hope you're eating lunch and then watching this. And but thank you for sharing your digestion time with us today. Some tips for following the presentation. There is a lot of information to cover, so I'm going to move quickly through it, but I'll do my best to be clear. I'll stick to the PowerPoint presentation as best as I can, but those who've seen my presentations in the past know I can wander a little bit down rabbit holes, but I'll do my best. And then I'm going to pause from time to time for those who are taking notes, and also just for those who, when you get a lot of information coming at you, you need a little bit of time to process. So I try and put some pauses, deliberate pauses in to kind of allow you an opportunity to absorb stuff and then be ready for the next point or thought. Please do take notes, write down your questions. A copy of the presentation is going to be available later. PowerPoint is available as well. And for those who might be watching this in the future, please keep in mind that what we are sharing today, I should have moved forward, sorry. What I am sharing today is related to the law at its present moment. There are going to be processes, policies, legislation that's going to cause some changes going forward. So don't take everything that you're watching as gospel truth. Check back, check in with colleagues, with others, people in the community to get more up-to-date and more accurate information. Pour les individuals francophone qui est présent, vous pouvez poser vos questions en français. Je ne parle pas français couramment, mais je peux vous comprendre et je ferai de mon mieux pour répondre à vos questions. Okay, so don't be shy. And then there was something else. Yes. So the title in today's presentation is with regards to immigration appeals. I'm going to be using that as a generic term to refer to hearings, appeals, applications before the Immigration Division, the Immigration Appeal Division, the Refugee Appeal Division, and the Federal Court of Canada. Okay, so those 4 different institutions and areas. All right, I think I've covered all my opening notes. Okay, so first thing, why hire a lawyer? Well, it's obvious. Immigration appeals are challenging, right? They're not straightforward, they're complicated, and the stakes are really high. So it is important to consult with a professional to determine the best course of action, because what will work for you might not work for someone else, might not work according to what you've heard from people in the community or people have told you. So consulting with a professional is the best way to get the information and advice that you need that will help you navigate this difficult or challenging time. If you are using an immigration consultant, keep in mind that consultants have similar professional and ethical obligations as a lawyer. So verify that the person you are working with or you are considering hiring, that they're authorized with the College of Immigration Citizenship Consultants. And also keep in mind, consultants cannot appear before the Federal Court of Canada. So if you are considering making an application before the Federal Court of Canada, you do need to hire a lawyer to do so. Yeah, I forgot I always do the highlights. Okay, I'll keep up now. Okay, so another key stakeholder in this area, in this work, are immigration service organizations. They are an excellent resource for immigrants and newcomers to Canada, and people who have been in Canada for a long time and might be facing some challenging situations with regards to immigration appeals. They help provide information about immigration proceedings. They offer practical support as you prepare for your hearing or applications. Some examples of that is helping with country research, helping you gather evidence, writing letters of support or gathering letters of support. They can help provide you with technical support as well, right? There's a lot of things that are done online, or applications and computers and navigating websites. They're an excellent resource for these types of things. They also can assist you in advocating for yourself during difficult times. And sometimes those difficult situations can involve in communicating with immigration authorities and communicating with your counsel. The immigration service providers can be helpful in being able to navigate and deal with that as well. Right, here's a website for finding your list, finding a list, or you can edit this list to show immigration service organizations that are in your area. So I put that on here. You can find the list on the Canadian Council for Refugee website. Okay, now let's get a little bit more into the meat and potatoes of things, which is funny because I'm vegan, so I don't eat meat, but I always like saying this. Anyways, sorry, I'm making a terrible joke. Okay, what to know about applying for legal aid. This is what we're going to go through. I'm going to talk to you about when to contact us, how you can contact us. Oh, I'm clicking too far and too fast. My apologies. I hit the wrong button here. Okay, I was going to say when to contact us, how to contact us, what happens when you call, who gets a lawyer, the $1 million question, is legal aid free? And then what happens next after you've made the phone call? When do you get a lawyer? Okay, so when to contact us? Contact us right away without any delay as soon as you've lost an immigration hearing or you are facing potential removal from Canada. I cannot stress this enough. And the reason why there should be no delay is because when you get a negative decision or you receive notice from Canada Border Service Agency that they are beginning proceedings, let me slow down there. Canada Border Service Agency, or CBSA, is the agency that is in charge with enforcing some aspects of the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act. Right? Their job is to, they're kind of like the police arm of immigration authorities. They protect our borders. They help administer the act and different aspects of the act. Oftentimes you'll recognize them because you'll see them when you are traveling in and out of Canada. Right? Those are the individuals who look at your passport and answer your questions as you're going through the border. Okay, so that's CBSA. Anyway, so sometimes you will receive notice from them that they're going to start with proceedings, right? Each immigration appeal or matter that I've listed here in front of us on the screen will have different deadlines for filing notices or your intention to appeal. The purpose of the deadlines is to have things moving quickly, right, and efficiently. So keep those in mind, and a deadline for one can be different for another. So the moment something is going wrong, it's very important to contact us right away. You can, and it's really important that you contact us well before the deadline expires. Now, you might not get a lawyer before the deadline for filing your notice or completing documents expires. Again, that would be a good reason to connect with an immigration service provider to help you fill in those forms and submit things as you need, so you're not allowing that deadline to expire. But keep in mind that there can be a delay between when you apply and when a lawyer is appointed. So you're going to have to come up with a plan, have some supports in place that can help you meet the deadlines before they expire. All right. Oh, man, I keep hitting the wrong button. My apologies. No, I hit the right button. Okay. There was one more thing I wanted to talk about on this previous slide. All right, legal aid can provide people with lawyers for the following things. So refugee appeals and judicial review applications, admissibility hearings and detention reviews, and removal appeals. I'm going to go through what each of these are briefly, but this is a list of things that legal aid does cover. When it comes to judicial reviews, so this last thing here on this first bullet, we only provide coverage for judicial review applications of negative refugee decisions by the RPD, the Refugee Protection Division, or the Refugee Appeal Division. Okay, so keep that in mind. Judicial reviews are only for RPD matters where you've lost your refugee claim, or RAD matters, which is you have appealed a negative refugee decision and you were not successful. Okay. All right, now I said I was going to talk to you about what the different areas are. So understanding your immigration problem, let's spend a few moments talking about that. So first off, I listed was refugee appeals and or judicial reviews, right? So those are when you're appealing negative refugee decisions to the Refugee Appeal Division, right? So if you were in front of the Refugee Protection Division, it didn't work out, then your appeal goes to the Refugee Appeal Division or to the Federal Court of Canada. Because there are some people where when they receive a negative refugee decision, they're not able to appeal to the Refugee Appeal Division. They must go straight to the Federal Court of Canada. The Federal Court of Canada, again, I said, is an option when you have received a negative decision from the Refugee Appeal Division. Then you would go to the Federal Court of Canada to appeal that decision. The next issue we cover is admissibility hearings. This is when Canada Border Service Agency, or CBSA, thinks that you shouldn't be in Canada. A hearing is scheduled before the Immigration Division to decide whether or not CBSA is right? Should you be found inadmissible, so not allowed to stay in Canada, or should you be allowed to stay in Canada, be found admissible? All right, detention reviews. Oh, there was one point I was going to make about admissibility hearings. Okay. Most admissibility hearings are scheduled for individuals who have committed a crime in Canada. If you are not a Canadian citizen, so just to give you a bit of background, if you are not a Canadian citizen and you were convicted of a criminal offense, you can be deported from Canada. And if you lose your admissibility hearing for this reason, or for any reason that you're before the admissibility hearing, have an admissibility hearing, but mainly for this reason, if you lose the admissibility hearing, you will be issued with a removal order. So I just wanted to make that clear for folks. Detention reviews. Canada Border Service Agency has the right to arrest and detain you and keep you in an immigration holding center. There are a number of different reasons why that might happen. I won't get into that, but that's detention review is a hearing before the immigration division to determine whether or not this person should continue and remain in immigration detention until their immigration situation has resolved. And then we have removal appeals. This is when you're appealing a removal order by the immigration division to the immigration appeal division. So remember, if I skip to the slide before, we talked about admissibility hearings, right? If the admissibility hearing, it does not go well, you receive a negative decision or a removal order, you can appeal that order to the removal appeal division. Now, not every person has a right to appeal a negative decision to the immigration appeal division. Again, that's why it would be helpful to consult with an immigration service provider, with an immigration consultant, speak with a lawyer, so you know whether you can or cannot do this. And also, removal appeals can be scheduled when Canada Border Service Agency, or CBSA, receives a decision from the immigration division that was made in your favor that they are not happy with. Here is the website for the Immigration Refugee Board. It's a fantastic website. It's a little hard to navigate, but it is a fantastic website. It is full of information that would be helpful to better understand your immigration problem and also understand the processes that must be followed, or that the IRB follows as they're managing and administrating the work that they do. Here's a website for the Federal Court of Canada. This is an excellent website that has a lot of really good resources for individuals who are trying to figure out how to navigate their immigration issue before the Federal Court of Canada. You see that there's a tab, a quick link for representing yourself, which can be helpful for folks where you are planning on getting counsel, but it's just good to know what happens, what are the processes, what are the timelines. And then they have these really handy procedural charts that show you visually, you start here, then you move here, then you move there. Okay, so what do we not cover? Okay, emphasis on not. These are things that Legal Aid Alberta is unable to provide people with lawyers for. Danger opinions, humanitarian compassion applications, pre-removal risk assessments, and then deferral requests and stays of removals. These are things that Legal Aid will not provide you with coverage for. However, I can't stress enough, each immigration appeal or matter has a different deadline for filing notices or intentions to appeal. So simply because legal aid does not cover it doesn't mean that there's not a sense of urgency for the matter, or that you shouldn't take steps to gather information. If calling us is the first place that you can think of to get the information that you need, or for a family member or a friend to get the information you need, give us a call. It might not be a matter that we cover, but at the very least, we can direct you to resources that would be helpful. All right, warning. When you are contacting legal aid, remember that these deadlines are such that it is your responsibility to keep up the paperwork and know what you need to file before the deadlines expire. Please use community resources to help you keep track of these dates and help you with reminders and completing the documents that you need, so that while you might be waiting for us to appoint a counsel, a deadline's not expiring. And then if you do have the opportunity, if you've already filed the application and then you're coming to legal aid afterwards, avoid scheduling your immigration hearing before you have finished your legal aid application process. There are going to be some matters that will be scheduled, and there's little that you can do to delay or postpone. For example, with detention reviews, there are hearings that are scheduled based according to the legislation. You can't really postpone or adjourn anything. However, other matters, you will have a little bit of flexibility in communicating with the Immigration Refugee Board. So be sure to advise them, if you are waiting for legal aid to appoint a lawyer to your file, that you let them know that's what's happening. Right. How to apply? Well, here's our telephone number. Here are the hours that we are in operation. When you call, a legal intake specialist will answer your call and will ask you for some personal details and the reason for your call. This information is kept confidential between you and legal aid and is only gathered to help you get the right lawyer for your case. If you have, it can be helpful to have your documents present with you as you answer questions, because perhaps you might be asked questions about dates or details that you can't recall, but it's written down in the documents that you received. It's important to take notes during the calls so that you can remember if you're told to call back, to provide documents. If you're told you'll hear back from us in a particular for a particular period of time, or after a particular period of time, then you can take notes and write that down. If you don't speak English and you need help, make sure to call with someone who can help you. You can have the call on speakerphone. They don't have to be a professional. They don't have to be, a translator, an interpreter. You're hired. A family member, a friend, someone in the community that you trust, that's all fine. And then if there is no one who can translate for you, not a problem. Legal aid can arrange for a translator to be on the call. Okay. So who gets a lawyer, and what are the costs? So legal aid is for people who do not make a lot of money. To get a lawyer, you need to show that you don't make a lot of money and you have legal problems that legal aid provides lawyers for. And that $1 million question, is legal aid free? Legal Aid Alberta is not free, but it is much cheaper than a private lawyer. Legal aid lawyers charge approximately, well, not approximately, it is, sorry. Legal aid charges $125 per hour. You can enter a payment plan with legal aid for as little as $20 a month. You can enter that payment plan at the start of your file, during the opening of your file while it's ongoing at the end. And there's no interest and no deadline for repayment. Here is a guide or an image of our financial eligibility. Just to unpack this a little bit, right? To qualify for assistance, you have to be within our financial eligibility guideline, which you see here on the screen. These guidelines are set by the Alberta Minister of Justice, who is mandated to deliver legal aid services to Albertans through the federal government of Canada. This is our income guide scale. It is based on the numbers of members in a family. which would include spouses and children and dependents. The dollar figure that you see on top here, right? So above the line, that shows the maximum monthly income after taxes. And then the dollar figure on the bottom is the annual income after taxes. So there are some exceptions and deductions and considerations that are part of the our comprehensive formal financial assessment that is required to determine financial eligibility of our clients. Eligibility is best determined by our legal intake specialists. So this guide is helpful, but don't, if you look at it and you're thinking, oh, me, I don't fit in, I don't see how I fit in, but I know I don't have a significant income, please call. One of our intake specialists will help you figure out whether or not you are eligible and answer any questions that you have. They're the experts in that, so don't hesitate to call. All right, and so then when you call, what are you going to be asked? Remember, I had mentioned that you'll be asked a bunch of questions to help match you with the right lawyer and to help the intake specialist understand what is your specific legal issue or problem and get you matched up. So when you call, you'll be asked, here's a list of some of the questions, right? So you can kind of get yourself ready. You'll be asked to summarize your legal issue. So what do you want a lawyer for? Why are you calling? What country are you from, right? Or where was your country of regular residence? When did you get your negative immigration decision? Remember, I had mentioned more than once about deadlines. Well, this will help you when you're having your conversation with the legal intake specialist. Okay, well, you can say, I remember I got the decision on such and such date, and then you can start to count forward and figure out when that deadline is. But it's really important to know when you received the negative decision. If you had a hearing beforehand, for example, if you had an admissibility hearing and now you're doing a removal appeal, well, what happened at the immigration hearing? Right? Can you summarize it and explain what happened? It doesn't have to be a perfect explanation, just something that helps guide and to know, okay, is this the right step going forward? You'll be asked whether or not you filed your notice to appeal, because remember, with those deadlines, if you are calling close to around the deadline, perhaps you would have filed already. So it would be really important for us to know whether or not you've done so. And then, do you have a hearing date? Ideally, you're not scheduling a hearing date, but the example I gave is with immigration detention reviews. Well, those will be scheduled. You don't have an option to postpone. So then letting us know when the next detention review is going to be would be helpful. And then there can be many more questions that will be asked. And then what happens next? So you've answered all the questions, right? We've done the eligibility, you've answered all the questions, then what happens? The legal intake specialist will ask you to send us your immigration documents, right? So especially when it comes to removal appeals, refugee appeals, it can be helpful for the lawyer who will be reviewing your application and helps the intake specialist really understand your matter and determine whether or not there is merit. Okay. There are no merit assessments for detention reviews. You don't have to worry about that. And what do I mean when I say a merit assessment? The merit assessment, or the purpose of it, is to decide whether or not you have a strong case. Your case doesn't have to be perfect, right? It doesn't have to be a case where you're guaranteed a win, right? There's no such thing. That's not what the purpose of the assessment is. It's to determine whether or not there's a reasonable chance of success for you if you get a lawyer, right? Will a lawyer be helpful to you as you're navigating this appeal, the hearing, or you're making the application? That's what happens at the merit assessment. If you are approved for a lawyer, you'll get an email or text message notification. Please wait before you call your lawyer. Again, I know that there are tight timelines and there's a lot of nerves. And so as soon as you're approved and you get that email, you're going to want to call right away. But sometimes there can be a slight delay between when you get the email and when the lawyer picks up the email. So it would be helpful and it would avoid confusion if, after you receive the email, you wait a day or so. So then you're certain, okay, I know the lawyer would have likely received the notification, right? And usually, I know, for example, in our office, it takes about a day or so before our immigration assistant is able to get everything in order, open up the file, and then be ready to start to guide clients through the process of opening their file and getting ready to meeting with me. And then from when you first apply until you are contacted by a lawyer, it can take about 2 to 4 weeks. Remember, during that time, while you're waiting, make sure to file whatever documents you need while you wait. Right? If you have contacted us close to that appeal deadline, make sure those documents are filed. Keep a copy of the documents that you filed. And again, this is where working with an immigration service provider and organization would be beneficial, because they can help you complete those documents, file the documents, and make sure you keep copies of it. All right, I'm going to pause here. There's been a lot of talking. I'm going to look and see if there are any questions.
Okay. And so far, Ruth, but again, just as a reminder for folks, sorry, it's the disembodied voice of Wyatt talking, you can use the Q&A feature in Teams to type any questions in. So similar to how you'd add a chat comment, you can just click the button that says share updates or start a discussion, and then you're able to type your question into that point.
Okay, thanks, Wyatt. All right, so no questions so far. Good. Let me make sure I'm hitting. Okay, so now let's talk about working with your lawyer. So how do you contact your lawyer? What should your lawyer be doing? What is your lawyer not allowed to do? What does your relationship with a lawyer look like? Right? Because for some of you, this might be the first time you're getting a lawyer. And then who do you contact if you have problems with your lawyer? Hopefully there are no problems, but I know the reality is that sometimes people don't get on. You could be like oil and water. And so let's have that awkward conversation about like, well, what happens if I don't like the lawyer and things aren't going well? Okay, so first point, there's only one line on this slide because this is the most important thing in my mind. It is your lawyer's job to provide legal guidance and advice and representation. That is the primary thing that a lawyer should be doing for you and what you can expect from your lawyer. In a file, you are in charge, right? Lawyers should be following your directions. Think of them as human Google Maps, right? You input where you want to go, and then the lawyer's job is to guide you to your destination. You say, this is the legal problem that I have, and the lawyer's job is to say, turn left here, turn right here, go straight ahead. Okay. How to contact your lawyer. You can use call or email. When you do so, make sure to leave a detailed message and enable your voicemail. I can't tell you how many times I have to remind clients and individuals to do that, because if you call and leave a message, then you'll probably want a message back, and having your voicemail enabled is helpful in doing that. And you'll contact your lawyers to make or keep appointments. Okay. Your lawyer's obligation is to respond in a reasonable time. Okay, so you reach out to the lawyer to start that communication, and your lawyer's obligation is to respond in a timely fashion. Now, reasonable can mean different things for different people. So ask, right? Ask your lawyer, hey, when I send an email or when I leave a call, when typically can I expect a response back? I know for my clients, I will always let them know, it takes me about 2 to 3 business days. And I'll explain that oftentimes when I come into the office in the morning, there are a number of emails that are waiting, or messages that are waiting, or I triage things differently, or this is how I organize my day. And so there can sometimes be a delay. And I provide my clients with some guidance as to if there is something urgent and you kind of need to skip the queue, then these are things that you do to skip the queue. But every lawyer is going to do things differently. Right? So having that conversation with your lawyer lets you know that when you do send an email or you leave your message, you're not wondering, oh, I never hear back. You'll know, oh yeah, they told me it takes me 24 hours. It takes them 72 hours to respond. Okay. What should your lawyer be doing? They should be explaining to you what the immigration appeal process is. They should be meeting with you more than once to talk about your case. They should tell you what evidence you need for your appeal and then review that evidence with you before submitting it to the institution that you're appearing before. They should be prepared for your hearing, right? So their job is to prepare you and also to prepare themselves. They should be helping you and your witnesses be prepared for the hearing. And then they should be coming to or attending your immigration hearing organized and prepared. What can your lawyer not do? Well, they can't ignore your calls or emails or avoid meeting with you. Can there be a slight delay? Okay, sure. Right? They need a little bit of time to respond. That's reasonable. That's fine. But never hearing back, that's not cool. They shouldn't tell you to lie or leave out information on any document. That's not allowed. They shouldn't suggest that you use false documents or manufacture or edit your documents, right? Even with AI, that is not something that they should be encouraging you to like tidy up or make better, right? There are rules with regards to using those functions, and they should be familiar with that. They shouldn't refuse to answer your questions or give you copies of your documents and forms. Right? All of your questions should be answered. And any document that you have provided or that they generate, you should have a copy of. They shouldn't refuse to do what you ask without a good reason. Sometimes, remember I used that example of the Google Maps or the iPhone Maps, right? Sometimes you're thinking, okay, I want to turn right up here, and the lawyer is saying, I want to turn left. Then there should be a conversation as to why the lawyer is saying left and you're saying, and why it is you're saying right. But it should not be, if you say you want to turn right, the lawyer should not respond to you by saying, no, we're not turning right, we're turning left. And if like, take it or leave it, like it or lump it, right? No, there should be a conversation. There should be a reason as to why they might be differing from you. But at the end of the day, it's your case, it's your decision. They shouldn't refuse to help you in preparing for your hearing. And no lawyer can promise that they will win your appeal. They might be really, really good. They might win everything all the time. But all they can do is give their best. They cannot guarantee a win or guarantee success. Okay, so I'll take a little pause here. Okay, so what's it like when you're working with your lawyer? Well, you and your lawyer should work together as a team. The lawyer is the expert in the law, but you are the expert in your life, right? You know the details of everything that has led up to the situation that you find yourself in. And remember, I said you are in charge when it comes to the direction of your file. So you should feel like the lawyer that you are working with is treating you with professionally, with respect, and also that there's some legal expertise they have there where you can feel, oh, they're competent. I feel confident with them. I feel comfortable. I feel like they've got this. Lawyers must always follow a code of conduct that requires them to provide competent, respectful, and quality service. I tell my clients, I summarize this last point to my clients like this, right? The lawyer is someone that you trust and that you like, right? You might have someone that you trust, but you don't really like because they're not respectful. They're not professional, right? Then that's not really a good match. You might have someone that you really like. They're always polite, right? They always answer your emails and your questions, your emails and your phone calls in a timely fashion. But when you ask specific questions and need specific advice, if they're always struggling or not helping you figure it out what the answer is, well, then that's legal expertise that is lacking. That's a competency that's lacking. And then that's not really good quality service. Here's a website for the Law Society. It will provide you with more information about what a lawyer's conduct should be like and a place to go when things are not going well. Right. So I said we were going to have talk a little bit about when things are not going well, which can be awkward to do, but it's important to keep in the back of your mind. Right. So, what do you do if you have a problem with your lawyer? Right? Talk to your lawyer about the problem. It may very well be that your lawyer is not being malicious, is unintentionally maybe not doing the best of returning the phone calls, or they think they're answering your question, but the responses that they're giving you isn't very clear. A lot of times the problems can be resolved just through a conversation and asking that your lawyer accommodate to meet your needs, right? And then what happens if talking doesn't even move anything forward? Well, if that's the case, if it's a legal aid lawyer, please contact us, right? You can make a request for a change of counsel. And if this is a private lawyer, if it was, for example, a matter that was not covered by legal aid and you decide to hire someone privately, then contact the Law Society for some guidance. If you are taking the final steps to change your lawyer, right? You've tried talking, it's not working. You've reached out to legal aid and you're like, I want a change of counsel. Please keep in mind that the Immigration and Refugee Board, CBSA, the federal court, they need to know if you are changing counsel. You need to ensure that your contact information with them is up to date because things will keep moving forward. The machinations are going to keep going, whether you have a lawyer or you don't. So you don't want to be in the situation where you're missing deadlines or missing communication. So if you do change counsel, make sure that you are in communication with these different institutions and organizations so that you're kept in the loop and you know what's happening if something comes up while you're in the period of transition. Okay, any questions so far? I don't see any. Okay. All right, look at me just humming along. All right. Okay, what are your roles and responsibilities? So, what are the things you should be doing before you meet with your lawyer? What is good client etiquette? We talked about lawyer etiquette. There's also client etiquette. And then what are your responsibilities? Again, we talked about lawyers' obligations, what they should be doing and should not be doing, and then there are responsibilities that you have as well when you're working with your lawyer. Okay, so before you meet with your lawyer, these are the things you must do on your own, right? Keep that contact information up to date with IRB, CBSA, Immigration, Refugee, Citizenship Canada, right? Any organized immigration authority that you're working with, keep that information up to date. Keep all of your immigration's documents together, right? Have them, they don't have to be perfectly organized, but at the very least, if they're in one folder, right, or in one pile somewhere in your house. Then you know where to go to grab everything and then bring it to your lawyer for those meetings. Avoid booking that immigration hearing before meeting with your lawyer. And then read about the immigration appeal process. I shared some of the websites already. The Immigration and Refugee Board website is great. Here it is again. The Federal Court of Canada website's a great website. Get some information that you need to know so that you know where you are going as you're proceeding. How to be a good client. Always tell the truth. This way, your lawyer has the information they need to give you accurate advice and guidance. Think of it as when you're working with your lawyer, you're working on a puzzle, right? It's a 100-piece puzzle. Well, if you go to the lawyer and you've only provided them with 97 pieces, that puzzle is going to be incomplete. You need to provide them all of the pieces in order for you to have a complete puzzle at the end. Be on time for your appointments. Life happens, I understand, but to the best of your ability, be on time for your appointments. Respond to telephone messages and emails in a timely fashion, right? Just as I said that lawyers should be doing that, you should be doing that as well. And talk with your lawyer about what's reasonable, right? What is the time frame that they would like to receive responses from? Read the information and directions your lawyer provides and follow them, right? They take the time to provide you with information and directions for your assistance. And so following them helps benefit you. Take notes when you're talking with your lawyer or ask for a copy of the notes. Right? The notes will help guide you as to what your next steps are. If you're not the best note taker, that's fine, right? Ask the lawyer, hey, can you send me an email summarizing this? Can you send me a copy of your notes from our meeting? Stay in contact with your lawyer about important dates. If something comes up, make sure that you're sharing that with them. Make sure they know your contact information and where to leave messages. And then talk with your lawyer about any disagreement that you may have with them. And again, a lot of disagreements can be resolved simply by having that conversation and asking for that accommodation. And then how can you be engaged with your file? As you're working with your lawyer, what are some of the things that you can do to help improve your outcome? Well, talk to your lawyer about things you can do to help with your case, right? Gathering evidence, information that you can read, resources that you can access, things that you can do to get into new habits and behaviors that will help when it comes to, for example, removal appeals, where you're asking for an opportunity to continue to stay in Canada. Follow the guidance that your lawyer gives you, particularly when it comes to gathering evidence. I can't tell you how many times I hear from my colleagues that they've provided instructions to a client to take certain steps and the client hasn't done it. Sometimes that happens to me. We understand that life happens, things get busy, but the guidance is there that is given is for your benefit. And if you're not following it, then you're really limiting the ability of your lawyer to advocate for you. Right? Again, I just mentioned this, gathering that evidence and documents that you're told to collect. And if you're not able to get it, make sure that you're keeping a record of the attempts that you've made, right? So things that you've done to collect it. What's causing you to get stuck? Maybe you can work that out and unpack it with your lawyer. Keep a record of that because that can be really beneficial in helping your lawyer know, okay, what should be the next steps and where they should go as an alternative. And then when you need help, ask for help. Immigration appeals can be scary. They can stir up a lot of emotions. There's a lot of sometimes embarrassment or shame when you're going through this process because you think, well, I've done something wrong and I'm not going to get myself out of this hole. right? Your lawyer's job is not to judge you, is not to make you feel any smaller, is not to be an obstacle for you for changing the course and direction of your life. They're there to support and encourage you. So don't feel embarrassed. Don't let shame get in the way of getting the help that you need. Ask for help when you need it. Simply because you are in this situation, it does not make you a bad person, and you deserve support like anybody else when you're going through a tough legal time. And then lastly, beware of gossip. Your case is not the same as others. Avoid comparisons. I have the image here of like find the difference between these two images, right? A lot of times people will tell you, and I think for, out of a good place, right? They might exaggerate things, they gloss over things to make you feel better, tell you, oh yeah, this is totally easy. I had the very same thing, right? Like they're the parrot here on the left. Or is this a parakeet? It doesn't matter, sorry. They're the bird here on the left. Oh yeah, right? Like it was so easy. But you're the bird on the right. You don't have the little fancy head feathers there, right? There's a different limitation that's happening. So, when people are giving you that advice or that guidance, right? Take it with a little bit of a grain of salt. It's nice to have the encouragement or for people to paint a rosy picture, but they're not professional. They're not the legal professionals. Okay, so avoid those comparisons. Immigration cases are complicated. There is no fast and easy solutions. And if it was fast and easy for someone else, well, bless them. I'm glad that worked out. It might not necessarily be fast and easy for you. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Maybe your case is just going to be slow and complicated. Okay. Talk to your lawyer first before copying what others have done. Maybe what others have done is a good idea. And when you talk to the lawyer about it, they'll say, oh, actually, yeah, this is a good idea. This could be something that you could do. But if you don't talk to the lawyer first, you don't know. And if someone says that you should hide information or not tell the truth, don't listen, run in the opposite direction. As my mother would say, two wrongs do not make a right. This is not a moral judgment. This is a fact. And I'm also not being flippant, right? Being honest isn't easy, right? It requires you to be vulnerable. It requires you to trust someone trust someone, your lawyer or consultant, right? Someone you don't really know who is a stranger to you. It asks you to trust a process that has let you down before, right? If you're doing an appeal, things haven't worked out before, right? But being dishonest is not the shortcut or the route that you should be taking to get the outcome that you want, right? It takes bravery and it takes courage to tell the truth and to honestly navigate your way through different and challenging legal proceedings. All right. That's it. That's my presentation.
So thanks, everyone. We'll wrap up today's presentation. So on behalf of Legal Aid, thank you, Ruth, for taking the time to share your expertise, and thank you all for spending your Friday lunch with us. We hope everyone has a fantastic long weekend and a great Valentine's Day.
Yes, thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend. Thanks, Walt.